see you all. I'm excited that this program exists and that you guys are all participating in this, this project this semester. GoFarm, I don't know whether you all are familiar with GoFarm. Yosef gave a brief summary, and basically, if you've walked through Golden at all, you've probably seen the container over at Ford and Water. Has everybody seen the container over there, or not? Maybe not. Okay, well, take a walk. And this is one of two containers that we have in Golden. And basically, we operate a local food share program out of this container. And people come once a week or once every 2 weeks to pick up fresh produce, and we also have a food share. So the mission, as has already been stated, is to increase local supply and access to more affordable, fresh, healthy food in Greater Golden area. And the supply and the access is the key here. And access is has kind of a few different angles that we'll talk about. And we do that through farmer assistance, community education, and full access. I'm going to go through, just kind of back up here a little bit. Got a few slides on GoFarm in general, then I'll talk about the GoFarm to Seniors program. I'm going to go through most of this material pretty quickly because I'm hoping that you guys will have questions. And I don't want to be too detailed on things that you already know. So, so feel free to kind of begin to log in your questions. And Ann and I are happy to answer any questions that you have. So farmer assistance, one of the big pieces is when farmers first start, especially local urban farmers, there's a lot of challenges. And so what GoFarm's trying to do is provide access to a market, kind of minimize the amount of time they have to spend doing marketing and coordinating with their customers, that sort of thing. So that's one of the things through the two containers that GoFarm has that we try to provide. We've got the container at Ford and Water Street, and then we've also got a container over at Centura. And that's a new container. We have a couple of shares that we distribute out of there right now. Next summer it'll be in for full operation. And then we've got two beginning farmers. And beginning farmer is actually a technical term that's used by the USDA. I think it's 10 years or less for a farmer that's been in business. And because farming is such a challenging startup, they do give preferential treatment to those first 10 years. And the way that we provide benefits to those beginning farmers is not only do we give them preferential treatment when we order, but we also help. I'll talk about that a little bit more detail, and I've got a couple of brochures here too. I don't know if you guys have seen the details, if you know the income guidelines, that sort of thing. You can pass those around. But that's a pretty important piece of the full access. Basically, access is both affordability as well as geographic, physical access, and SNAP does assist greatly with that affordability. We're also participating in another program that Live Well Colorado has coordinated. It's called Double Up Food Bucks, and Anna's going to talk a little bit more about that in her presentation. But basically, it's a dollar for dollar match. So every dollar up to $20 that they spend on their SNAP card, they can then match those dollars for fresh local produce. And so it fits perfectly with our mission and the services that we provide. Okay, GoFarm to Seniors. Basically, we applied for a grant from Kaiser Permanente. It's a 2-year grant. We started in March. And the goal of that program is to decrease food insecurity, which is one of those terms that they use, and it makes sense once you understand what it means. And it's just kind of a catch-all. Our target audience is adults 60 years and over, and we've limited our geographic reach to Jefferson County, which is quite large, and we were starting in the greater Golden area and expanding out as we get better and better at what we do. The way that Kaiser designated the grantees to decrease food insecurity is by increasing enrollments in the SNAP program. There's some research, and I've got a slide on that talks about the connection between using SNAP dollars for healthy food. And then increase the awareness. And so the way that we do that with GoFarm, given that we are a local food share program, We try to increase their nutrition awareness, their connection between nutrition and health, and the connection between health and using SNAP or being enrolled in SNAP. It's a little bit of a stretch, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we're figuring it out. So, food insecurity. Just some statistics for you, and I've got a reference sheet at the end too with several different reports that you may want to peruse. But 1 in 7 Colorado seniors are considered food insecure. Like I said before, that food insecurity is linked to health issues, which drive healthcare costs. The research that they've done is for every dollar that they spend, that they use their SNAP dollars, typically it improves the quality of the food and their health. The issue, and this is the problem that Kaiser Grant is trying to address, a lot of people that are eligible for SNAP don't enroll. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll talk about that in just a second. And Jefferson County, believe it or not, is the 7th worst in Colorado. It's worse because it's those marginal income people typically that don't enroll. It's not the low income. They're usually in every program that they qualify for just because they've got the resources to help them get enrolled. But it's the people that are on that margin that are our target audience that are typically not enrolled. So, SNAP enrollments, the barriers to enrollment, lack of information. They may not know that they qualify. It's funny, when I talk to people, they are surprised. And with seniors, one of the unique rules about the seniors is anybody over 60, or if they're certified disabled, they can deduct their medical expenses from the SNAP guidelines. And if you'll notice in that brochure, there's a gross income level and a net income level. And the difference between those two is not tax deductions, but it's the deductions for things like housing and rent, utilities, childcare if they pay childcare, and medical expenses for people that are over 60. Stigma is another big one, and that's the biggest reason that most people that aren't enrolled cite as not being enrolled is they see it's seen as welfare. And so they don't really want to be enrolled, especially the seniors. They've been independent all their lives, and so now suddenly to have to be dependent on what they see as something that they never had to participate in before, it's a very difficult thing for them to accept. And the third big reason that we face is the application process for SNAP is a little cumbersome. I don't know if any of you have ever interfaced with the Department of Human Services on an application of any sort, but I've got a brother who actually has schizophrenia, and I've helped him with his process, and the process is just very cumbersome. And so it's that cost-benefit analysis. It's, that they do kind of mentally in their head. Is the cost of going through this hassle worth the benefits that I'm going to get? And again, those marginal income people, they might get $16 a month for all of their effort. And is that really worth it to them? Well, with the Double Up Food Box program, it becomes a little more enticing because now it's $32 a month instead of $16 a month. And then with the fresh produce boxes that Anna and I talk about with our programs, it's even better because it's a great deal for the box. So how do we address those barriers? We combine the SNAP information with this nutritional information, so I provide cooking demonstrations. We provide some nutrition information sessions, and then we do the fresh produce distribution. And we try to connect those to the SNAP dollars, and hopefully then they are incented to enroll if they're not enrolled currently. And then the other thing that I've got a little iPad, and I'm mobile, so I can go around. I can meet them at their house if I need to. I can meet them at the school. I can meet them at the senior center, and we can sit in a little private room. We can go through. We can do the application online, submit it. They're done, and if they're 60 years and over, they get a telephone interview. So they don't even have to go to the Department of Human Services for a physical interview. They just have to go over there and pick up their card. That's the only thing they have to do. So transportation barrier is minimized. Let's see. And then to date, we've been doing the pilot since middle of July, and we've assisted 10 people with applications, but only 2 of those have been approved. So that's been an interesting process for me to see who, because I know all their income information as I help them with their applications, and to see who gets approved and who doesn't get approved. It's like, wow, they're still, even if they don't get approved for SNAP, they're still very low income. They're still struggling to make ends meet. So there's still an area there that needs addressing, even a qualified SNAP. Full access for seniors. This is the pilot demonstration program that we're doing. We're doing it over at Canyongate, which is a seniors facility, 60 and above, affordable housing, and so the people in there should be in that target audience as I've worked with them. Many of them are already enrolled in SNAP, and some are not. I've enrolled a couple. They've gone through the application process with me, and some I've talked to them about it, and I suspect they probably do qualify, but it's the stigma thing. And even having developed a relationship with them and worked with them, they're still very resistant to approach that application. And so we're still have some challenges ahead. But basically what we do at Canyongate is we have a fresh produce box, and Anna's going to go into a little more detail on her produce box program because she's the one that started it with the families program, and I just kind of copied her design. But we do a produce box once a week, $5, and it's about 5 veggies. This week it was kale, tomatoes, cucumber, and squash with a recipe, and it's right there at their location. So I go over there once a week. I have the produce with me. I pick it up at Fresh Pack, bring it over in cooler, so we complete that cold chain, and it's right there. So they can walk out of their apartment, come down, pick up their food, take it back to their apartment, boom, they're done. They can use their SNAP card if they want to. I've only had 2 or 3 people use their SNAP card to date, which is kind of interesting. What we find is a lot of people will spend all of their SNAP dollars at the beginning of the month, so you have to catch them within the first couple of days of that money coming out of their card if you want to get that money to apply for the Double Up Food Bucks. And they obviously can receive the Double Up Food Bucks program too, which they all see as a great incentive. And then here's the references, and I can forward this to Lisa for however you want to have that. But these are great resources, and as you begin to do research, they'll lead you to all kinds of other sources. So I'll let Anna go ahead and present, and then we'll take questions. Does that sound all right? And you're supposed to up here. Not sure.
Great. So I'm also going to go over the GoFarm to Families program really briefly and then allow time for questions. So definitely write down any questions you can think of, and Kim and I are both happy to answer any questions you come up with. But GoFarm to Families, the primary goal for the program is to address affordability and access of fresh, healthy food. Access we do by being where they are. So we're at 4 different Jefferson County preschools, and parents can pick up the produce boxes when they're picking up or dropping off their kids. So it's really convenient for them. And then affordability, it's $7 for the GoFarm to Families box, which is a really good value for what you get. And then we also accept SNAP and do the Double Up Food Bucks program. The way that the Double Up is working with our program is that it's a buy one, get one free, and they can pay for up to 2 weeks at a time, and then that actually allows for 4 weeks of food boxes for only $14. So the food boxes themselves, these are a couple images that are good examples of how much produce is in them. We're always trying to find a balance between local, value, and organic. So we work with a couple local farmers and try to source their items first. Value, we work with Fresh Pack and sometimes get some donated produce, so that for $7 they're getting quite a bit of food, definitely more than they'd be able to get at the grocery store for that amount of money. because we do get some items donated, and then we sell all the produce at cost. So we're not making any money on the program because we're grant funded. So basically we're passing on wholesale costs to them. Organic, that's another priority for us, but local and value kind of come first, and organic is maybe the third priority. We've definitely found that the families do appreciate the local component. They feel like they're supporting local farmers, and that's important to them as well. Obviously value is important. In organic, people definitely see the value in it. I'd say it's kind of a toss-up between local versus organic for the families. And we found that we really want to include mostly more basic, familiar items. It's really intimidating to people if you have 7 items that they've never cooked with before. One of the biggest deterrents to the boxes, like why people wouldn't buy them, is if they feel like they wouldn't be able to use them. I've definitely heard parents, kind of look at the list of what's included for the week and be like, oh, I don't know if we'll be able to eat that. And even though it's a really good value, they don't want to buy it if they feel like they're not going to be able to use it. So we try to do mostly familiar items and then maybe 1 or 2 new items. And we always include a recipe just to kind of help give tips on how to use that new item. But then it's kind of a low risk way to try something new because you're still getting a good value with all the other items that you're familiar with. There's also an educational component to the program. So we always have a recipe each week included with the food box. There's classroom materials for each of the classrooms, so lesson plans, books, other fun stuff for the kids to just kind of learn about the fruits and vegetables, learn how they grow, and just become more familiar with them. I also have a Facebook page for the program that I post even more like prep tips, storage tips, that kind of thing. Every week we also have one farm that's our featured farm for the week, so one Colorado farm that we have details about for the families to read up on. And then we also do different education components like talking about seasonality. Like for example, last week we had a little segment about this is our last week for Colorado peaches because the season is about to end, that kind of thing. The reason that we're targeting the 3 to 5-year-old age group is that it's a really, really important time for developing taste preferences. So it's kind of that hook them while they're young tactic for that. Exposure and modeling, those are 2 really, really important predictors of eating fruits and vegetables. So just exposure to an item over and over again. It takes several times of trying a fruit or vegetable before a kid might like it. And one thing that's kind of interesting is when you're talking to young kids, you usually try to say, oh, do you like this or do you not like it yet? You wouldn't imply that they're not going to like it ever. You just say, oh, it's an acquired thing. You have to keep trying it, and just really encouraging kids to keep trying the food. And then modeling is, if your parents are eating healthy foods, you're more likely to be eating healthy foods, which is why we really want to make it easier for the families to take fresh, healthy food home versus just focusing on the classroom. And I found that a lot of kids really are excited about fruits and vegetables. This little boy on the top here, every week when he's helping pack the bag, he's like, oh yes, an apple, I want that. Oh yes, carrots, I want that. And I'm like, okay, great, like you're supposed to pick 3, and he'll pick his 3, and he always picks the biggest 3 that he can find. And then he'll reach for the 4th one, and you always have to tell him, like, okay, those are for other people. Take your turn. But it kind of makes sense. I mean, fruits and vegetables are cool colors, cool shapes, and you get to eat them, so. Yeah, so like I said, that was really quick, but happy to answer any questions about the logistics of the program or other challenges that have come up with families. And if anyone is ever interested in volunteering at the distribution at the preschools, please contact me. Anyone have any questions? Yep.
So how do you select the preschools that you go to?
Yeah, so I put out a survey for preschool directors last winter, and asked a couple questions, mostly around what kind of things you're already doing about teaching healthy eating and that kind of thing. And then I also wanted to target preschools that are serving lower income families. So one of the questions is what percentage of your families are enrolled in SNAP, that kind of thing. So I selected my preschools that way. I'm working with Head Start in Jeffco, which is a great location because there's so many classrooms there. So being at one location, I can reach a lot of families.
I'm curious about how you identified the problem in the first place, and then kind of what brought you to all that you do today. Where did you see that need originally?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and Kim, feel free to jump in. I think there's a lot of programs right now that are focused on teaching healthy eating in the classroom and kind of getting that education component, but to really address the access and affordability piece, there's a little bit less of that, especially at schools, like considering the home component. So that's where I kind of came at it from. But.
Yeah, and it's this whole notion of tying nutritious food together with the affordability, and because there's food banks out there, people can get, and that's what I find with the seniors is they can get a lot of food from the food banks, but it may not be healthy food. And so what we're trying to do is really emphasize that health, nutritious component, and then tying it in with the local fresh produce. It pulls in the local farmers, it builds the economy, you build that local food system. So it's kind of a win-win-win all the way around. And then the GoFarm idea, I think initially was just local food shares and making that local, connecting the farmer to making it easier for people to get to the local farmers.
So were you already working with farmers or in preschools, or like what kind of exposed you to the issue?
Yeah, so I was actually in school getting my master's in public health when I was looking for like an internship type activity. And Eileen, who is the founder of GoFarm, had kind of a rough idea of this program and was looking for someone to help write a grant. There was a grant opportunity through the Colorado Health Foundation. So GoFarm already existed as it was, and then this was kind of an add-on program to do more community outreach. So yeah, I hadn't been working with preschools before that. Yep.
Do you think it's better to sort of get an entire community involved in something like this, or is it better on a more individual basis?
By individual, do you mean like person on person, or like?
Yeah, like individual families, or
Yeah.
is it having the whole community kind of doing one thing makes it more effective?
Yeah. So I found that, if you think of the school as a community, I found it to be really helpful if the teachers are allowed to participate, even though they might not be as low income. If they can participate, they kind of become my biggest champions, and they help communicate to the families that oh, you get such a good deal, and it's a lot easier for them to communicate with the families than me because I'm, a stranger coming into the school. But if all the teachers are participating and really enjoying it and sharing that with the families, they can also then, talk about, oh, we got this week, this is what I did with it, this is the recipe I used, and definitely having that community feel within the school is really, really helpful.
We find the same thing with the seniors program. Building that, it's almost peer pressure, right? You're creating a culture, and that's one of the things that we wrote in our grant was we want to change the culture to a healthy culture. And so now instead of complaining about the rotten food from the food bank or whatever the issue is, they're talking about the recipe they got, or they're talking about those fresh cucumbers, weren't they good? And we've got the presence there, so they're seeing that on a regular basis. With the cooking demonstrations, it's an activity for the seniors. It's a little different than the preschoolers, but for them, having an outsider there is a big deal. They love to come and talk, and so just kind of beginning to build up that whole relationship, and then they talk amongst themselves, and I think the community is critical. So.
Yeah, and just getting that buy-in piece, getting people excited about it is just so important. And I think, having a relationship with the preschool directors before we started was really important for our program because they started to talk to the families about it. And I think, if I was just setting up a booth outside the preschool, I'd get way less traffic than if I had started to, talk to the families, figure out what kind of produce they like, get feedback, have that Facebook page so that there's a little bit of interaction and that kind of thing. Yep.
Are there any other groups that you guys are looking to possibly helping out? Like not just seniors and families, but maybe like college kids?
Right.
Well, there's one thing, actually, it was on my slide, but I didn't touch on it, and that's, we're working actually with Mines on a community farm. There's a piece of property over that's owned by Jefferson County Open Space, and it's managed by the Pleasant View Metro District. And we're looking at possibly doing a community farm where farmers could come and learn how to farm. It would provide produce for Pleasant View Elementary, which is a local, very low-income Title I school. So that's one way to begin to outreach. We also had a program that we did a feasibility study on called GoFarm at Schools. And that was related to this community farm. We looked at actually locating a farm on a school property. And there's a few issues with that, just from the administrative standpoint from the school district. But the concept is really good because it brings it one step closer, right? Because now you've got the farm on the school. A lot of schools have community gardens, so they've already got that connection with the growing on the property. So it's right out their door, it's an outdoor classroom. But if it's a farm, you've got a farmer there that's actually managing production and then selling the produce potentially to the kids and the families at the school and the local community, provides the possibility of creating a community food hub. So not only students from the school, but neighbors in the community also, would be coming for that. So that was another outreach program that we're playing with. You have to be careful when you're a startup, not to do too much at once. And so Anna's done a great job with getting her pilot off and running. And like I said, I kind of copied her design for the food distribution. And then we've got the SNAP enrollment.
And then another thing that we're doing is for our local food share, which the distribution is at the Golden Mill or Centura. If people want to pay with their EBT card, we're accommodating that as well. It's a little bit trickier because one of the rules with accepting SNAP is that anyone that pays for their food has to get it within 2 weeks. So a traditional CSA type model, you pay at the beginning of the season and then get a share every week. This limits us to taking payment and then giving food the next week and the week after that. And then because of the Double Up program, we can actually send it to 4 weeks, which is kind of nice because then it's one payment and then you get 4 weeks of produce. But we can't do the whole season with that group. Yep.
Can you go into a little bit more specifics about how you guys pack the boxes? Do you guys
Yes.
shoot for a certain amount of weight every time, or
Yeah. So in terms of the volume of what's in it, it really just depends. On Mondays we do the ordering and we look at the local farmers' availability list and pick from that. Also considering what the recipe is going to be, or we really build the recipe around what's available. And then on Wednesdays we go to Fresh Pack. And that's when we kind of pack all the items into coolers. When we're there, we also see if there's any reduced price items or donated items we can add to kind of increase the value of the boxes. But we are at the loading dock there, which is a refrigerated area, packing everything into coolers. And then we put it in a van and drive it to the preschool. And then at the preschool, families are asked to bring a reusable grocery bag, or we have some extras as well. And then we just kind of have the coolers open and have the kids or the families, take 4 apples, take 1 cantaloupe, that kind of thing. So it definitely has some logistical challenges to it. The coolers get really heavy, and a lot of times it's just me, hauling these big coolers. So if there was a way to make that a little easier, I think that would help us a lot too. And just the, driving back and forth in a van with coolers of food is not totally the most efficient thing either, so.
Yeah, the cold chain is really important. That's the food safety aspect of any food distribution program, and Fresh Pack has perfected it. They've got a great warehouse that, they've got stacks and stacks, pallets and pallets of food, and we're lucky enough to have that bay that we use, and that makes all the difference. Some of the other community-supported agriculture programs don't have access to something like that. It becomes a lot more challenging to keep your lettuce crispy and everything nice and fresh, and so that refrigerated space is critical.
And another thing that we run into is, if I'm at a preschool from 4:30 to 5:30, I might have missed some parents that already picked up, or some parents are picking up at 6. So, and they've already paid for their produce, so they have a bag that then has to be refrigerated somewhere in the preschool. And if the preschool just got a big milk delivery, they might not have room in their refrigerator. So that gets tricky as well. Yeah.
How big are the families that you guys serve, and does that affect how much food that they're allowed to take every week?
Right, so it's the same amount of food for everyone. One $7 box is the same. Some of my bigger families will get 2 boxes or even 3. So it's kind of up to them. We wanted to make sure that it's not an overwhelming amount of food because, again, people really don't like wasting food. So if they have a bigger family, they're welcome to get 2 or 3.
It's interesting with the seniors, it's a balancing act because they're really or concerned about wasting food. And so if I bring too much food, they don't want it. But they want to get a sense of value for their money. And so it really is a delicate balance in terms of how much food you have and what that food is. Like Anna said earlier, making sure that there's at least a couple of familiar items in there is really important, and then kind of stretching them a little bit with one item. It's funny because, I mean, I don't know how you guys cook, but like beets and kale, those are things that people are more and more eating, and so when you bring that and they look at it, some people know exactly what it is and are ready to take it in and saute it. And some people look at it like it's, from a foreign planet and aren't sure how to handle it. So it's fun.
Yeah, I've had some people say like, oh, I don't want that. Like, I don't know what that is. And you kind of have to talk them through like, well, this is a really easy way to prepare it. And, it's included. So, just take it and try it. And so it's been a good way to get people to kind of try some new things too.
That's why with the seniors, we have the cooking demonstrations because, then they can, very simple, low budget ways to cook.
Kind of touched on it some, but how does the model, especially the boxes, change from the seniors group?
Well, it's smaller, so it's a $5 box instead of a $7 box, and it's it focuses on what they're interested in eating. So some of them say that they have difficulty chewing, so sometimes I kind of watch. Although the carrots seem to be popular. Anna's box is huge. I mean, I look at the amount of food that's in her box. And my seniors would just be overwhelmed with that. One thing that I did notice earlier in the process is we did get some of the food from what they call the wall, which is, how would you describe it?
Kind of like their quick
Extra
sale
food.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff that, the grocery store doesn't quite want to carry because it really needs to go to the consumer ASAP. But since we're getting it that day and then bringing it to the families the same day, it works for the program.
And what I found with the seniors is I included some of those items in their box, and some of them were very picky. They looked at it and it was, it's a little ripe. And they said, this is too ripe. And you have to look at their comparison, right? They can go to the food bank and they can get food for free, and ripe food for free. And so what I found is I have to have very pristine, fresh veggies for them so that they feel like they're really they feel valued and they feel like that box is something important to them, at least with this particular group of seniors that I'm working with.
When you do the recipes and the educational component, do you focus on more than just fruits and vegetables, even though you're only distributing the produce? Do you try to...
So we usually just do one recipe a week, and it's always the main part of that recipe is one of the fruits or vegetables. They'll be, like you can add chicken to this or you can add whatever. But I would say the focus is fruit or vegetable for the recipes that I'm using.
I coordinated a nutrition education program for kids in schools using volunteers that were 60 and over to teach the program. And that program did focus on 5 food groups and went through, all the various aspects of eating healthy, including exercise, staying physically fit. And one of the key pieces there was the low salt, low sugar, fiber, making sure you get, 5 servings of vegetables a day. So that was more of an education program. And as we get into the seniors education program, some of that will be part of that, although the focus really is on fresh produce, just because that's what we do at GoFarm.
Yeah, and GoFarm to families, I recognize that because I'm only there once a week, I'm really not going to have a huge impact on the education around like nutrition as a whole. I'm really focused on that access affordability piece.
So what were the parameters of the grant that you received? And is it from the state of Colorado or is it from the federal government?
So mine was the Colorado Health Foundation, so it's a private foundation. One of the stipulations, which was kind of interesting for my program, is that the grant funds could not be used to pay for food at all. So that's why, we basically sell at cost or it's subsidized a little bit, and that subsidy is coming from GoFarm as an organization. Other than that, there wasn't a ton of stipulations. We had some target goals in terms of number of food boxes. So for year one, we were aiming to sell 720, and this is our 19th week, and at 3:30 I'm going to a preschool, and we should hit like 715 by the end of the day today. So we're pretty close to the year one goal, and we're going to go for another 6 weeks, so we should pass that. And another goal was just number of classrooms that we were going to interface with, and we've met that goal already too. So.
And for the Kaiser grant, it was, the primary goal there was increasing enrollment in SNAP. Actually, there were two parts to that grant. One was to increase the enrollments in SNAP. The other was to increase the number of kids participating in the summer lunch program. So two types of grantees. And there's 13 grantees within the Kaiser grant program. And it's really interesting. They're doing a cohort. And so I meet with the other grantees every 3 months. And we talk about the different programs, and we talk about what they're doing, what we're doing.